Today on March 14th, we are here to pay homage to our first national hero, the first national hero of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Right Honorable Joseph Chatelier. To start this morning's proceedings, we will now invite Mr. Vincent to do the national anthem of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We would continue with the anthem in Garifuna Town. As we know, the Right Honorable Chief Joseph Chatelier spoke French fluently and also Garifuna. Let's welcome Ms. Ulrika Gaines. the Honorable Ralph E. Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. the Honorable Lorraine Friday, Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Carlos James, Minister of Tourism, Civil Aviation, Sustainable Development and Culture, members of Cabinet, members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Frankie Joseph, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, uniformed organizations and cultural organizations, the media. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Please, you may have your seats. At this time, we would now invite Bishop Gilbert Porter, Testament Church of God, to lead us in prayer this morning.
Just say thank you. Lord, you have brought us through much. You have been so merciful to us, God. And many times, truth be told, we many times thought that this was it. But you have extended your mercy to us. You have brought us through without any eruption of the last afraid. And not one life was lost because of this eruption. You are still bringing us through COVID-19. And God, we give you thanks. Oh God, I ask you to continue to be with our leaders, our Prime Minister and his cabinet, our opposition leader, and all the members of Parliament, those in senior civil servants positions and those in the private sector. I pray that you continue to give us wisdom to navigate these times. I pray, oh God, that you continue, Lord, to help us to band together for the good of this country. Lord, I commit these proceedings into your hands. And Lord, I continue to look to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
To commence our ceremony this morning, we will have greetings from several organizations. To start these greetings, we have Ms. Vanessa Karan of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation. You may be seated now, please. I take this opportunity on behalf of the Foundation to express my profound gratitude to the organizers of this ceremony for inviting TGHF. I wish to also greet all listeners on radio at this time. And as I personally celebrate this 14 years on this beautiful island and 17 years of passion for the people, history, and culture, Foundation wish to explore with you the theme of gathering in relation to this very important moment in which we are participating here today. The history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines is part of the broader history of the Caribbean, which traces the movement of Amerindian people, now popularly known as Hereos, specifically these first people settled in all the Caribbean islands, developed a nomadic lifestyle, and were fiercely protective of their independence. However, after a period of time, it was here, in St. Vincent, that they gathered and were most numerous. It was here that the merging of the African and island Carib occurred, and where the Garifuna nation was born. The historical records which have been left to us by the colonial writers tell us only some of the story of the period from those pre-colonial times, the colonial experience under the British and the French, including the Carib Wars, and finally leading up to the exile of many of the Garifuna from St. Vincent and the Grenadines to Roatan, Central America in April 1797. We are still not fully aware of the circumstances surrounding the death of the paramount chief, the Right Honorable Joseph Chatoyer, on March 14, 1795, when we gather here to honor today. Perhaps we will never. However, still, as we have done officially and unofficially, forget the spirit of resistance which built this nation, or the sacred trust which has been handed down to this present generation to guard this country well, to conserve and carefully manage its rich resources of people, land, and sea, resources for which the Kalinago and the Garifuna people gave their lives to protect. However, the resources of a nation includes also its identity, its sense of nationhood, what constitutes its soul. It is this that shapes its path to development. This sense of identity is constituted by many elements, including a knowledge of from whence we came, a clear knowledge of who we are and where we have come from. What is our history? What, as a nation, should we embrace, be proud of, instill in future generations? What lessons should we take forward to learn from the past? It is these questions that emerge from an ongoing search for answers on the issues of national identity, and it is these issues which still challenge us in St. Vincent and the Grenadines today. Since 2001, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, a non-profit, has been making a contribution to St. Vincent and the Grenadines through our work in the promotion of Garifuna heritage and culture in general, and particularly through public awareness and education programs focused mainly on youth. Since we last gathered here in DORSETSHIREHILL in 2021, our country, and in particular the indigenous communities located in the red zone, the traditional Garifuna communities of Fancy, Oya, Sandy Bay, Greggs, Rosebank, and Rosehole, have been devastated by the impact of the explosive eruption of the La Soufrière volcano, which occurred on April 9, 2021. This occurred in conjunction with the ongoing global COVID-19 pandemic. Both these events resulted in our indigenous communities experiencing great hardship, dislocation to their lives and livelihoods. Despite these challenges, they also represent opportunities. It is clear that there continues to be a thirst for knowledge and information on the Garifuna heritage and culture. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the limitations of conventional medicine and focused attention on the need to examine traditional herbal remedies. We also learned the importance of self-reliance when it became clear that travel and the sourcing of imported food were impacted by the volcanic eruption and by COVID-19. There is a dire need for teaching material which focus on the Garifuna heritage and culture in schools. There is also an urgent need for an ongoing research program to engage our bright young minds in search of concrete information on their history and culture. There is a need for a museum which showcases all of the indigenous Vincentian historical, cultural, and anthropological experience. And last but not least, there is a need for a long-term training program to prepare Vincentian professionals in the fields of archaeology, history, anthropology, and museum sciences. Finally, there is a need for a statue of our national hero, the Right Honorable Joseph Chatoyer, to be commissioned and erected in a prominent location to honor the contribution he made to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As we gather today, we are again challenged by the need to continue the work of preparing to ground our future development firmly on the knowledge of our indigenous peoples and the contributions and achievements of the past. Focus for the future. The Garifuna Heritage Foundation intends to include a greater international component into our work, namely by promoting greater involvement of the Garifuna diaspora, who view St. Vincent and the Grenadines as their ancestral homeland. Some of our links in the diaspora have already been developed. Finally, I will end my remarks with the theme of gathering and celebration. The Garifuna Heritage Foundation has been particularly excited at the coming together of the Garifuna communities, both in SVG and in the diaspora, to share knowledge, discuss ideas, and formulated strategies for the promotion of the Garifuna culture and heritage. This year, TGHF hosted our 9th International Garifuna Conference, which brought together activists, practitioners, and researchers from all over the world. Our conferences have energized Garifuna communities to work together in the future to strengthen their links with each other, collaborate on economic and social programs, and develop a greater understanding of their Garifuna history and culture. It is this collaborative pooling of energies, resources, and ideas which represents, in principle, an important legacy of the history of our people, and one I wish us to reflect upon and commit ourselves to continuing as we celebrate the life of our first national hero, the Paramount Chief Right Honorable Joseph Chatoyer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Demircian. I would like to reinforce that St. Vincent and the Grenadines is indeed home of the Garifuna, and we look forward to your thrust specifically as it relates to empowering our youth in knowledge of the history. We would now have to bring greetings the Honorable Carlos James. He is the Minister of Tourism, Culture, Sustainable Development, and Civil Aviation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So let's welcome Honorable Carlos James.
Thank you. Her Excellency Dawn Smith, the Governor General's Deputy, the Honorable Ralph Egan Stars, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. the Honorable Lorraine Friday, Leader of the Opposition, other members of Cabinet, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Frankie Joseph, and members of his constabulary, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, the media, especially invited guests, and those who are listening via television, radio, and other media platforms. It is indeed an honor to stand here this morning, recognizing our country's first national hero, Paramount Chief, the Right Excellent Joseph Chatoyer. This amidst the challenges we have experienced and continue to experience, resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic climate change, and the eruption of the Lasso-Frey volcano. Under a mushroom of ash covering our small island and enveloping the challenges which followed thereafter, the worst natural disaster in post-independence St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we rise from the ashes as a more resilient people. Amidst these challenges, which tested our resolve, we saw the best of our Vincentian people. We recognize our healthcare workers who worked tirelessly to contain a health pandemic, those volunteers who labored day and night to ensure persons who evacuated the eruption of the Lasso-Frey were kept comfortable, providing support to them in shelters across the southern part of St. Vincent, and those who opened their doors to welcome persons from North Leeward and North Windward, some of them families, but some of them strangers, who treated those persons like families. Your courage, your kindness, your empathy showed the world what it means to be Vincentian. Those affected by these challenges are from the heart of our working class people, our indigenous communities. Their lives were disrupted. They lost livelihoods, homes, and setbacks to their advancement as a people. Our government continued to respond to these challenges, constructing homes for those adversely impacted, extensive repairs to public infrastructure and enhancement of services in those areas affected, millions in income support for those who lost livelihoods, and production support to farmers and small business operators in the red and orange zones. As we remember Paramount Chief, the Right Excellent Joseph Shattay, let us use this occasion to recommit ourselves to the struggle of our working class people. This is our history, our people, our struggle. We remain resolute in our quest for social justice and the development and advancement of our people. We remain hopeful that our efforts today will set the platform for tomorrow's generation. As Alexander Pope describes best when he said, "Hope springs eternal in the human breast." I challenge our people to raise their level of consciousness. Let us put aside the things that divide us most as a people: selfishness, political opportunism, and attempts to sow seeds of division. We owe those who made the sacrifices for our freedom, and it is our time to pay it forward and to continue the struggle for social justice. The struggle demands self-sacrifice and courage. It demands we prepare and we be prepared to encounter resistance and adversity, and that we do not allow those things to blind us from our ultimate goal in our quest for development. The fight for our people's future is long from over. It is a marathon in which only those who act wisely and with foresight will reach the finish line as we pass the baton to the next generation of freedom fighters. There is no easy walk to freedom. We have freed ourselves from the colonial past, but we must also free our minds from the things that entrap us as people. The idea that we can't, we are too small, our country doesn't stand a chance in everything we set about to accomplish. If we are to take anything from Chatouille, is our resilience as a people, our courage and our determination. Our determination to construct an international airport when everyone said we simply could not do it. Our courage to stand for a seat on the UN Security Council as the smallest nation ever to be elected as a non-permanent member. When others thought it was hopeful, it was not hopeful, and an impossible task. Our resilience to pick up the pieces after the eruption of the Lasso Fray and rebuild our communities. This is who we are as a people. This is what makes us Vincentians. We wear the scars of our past, the enslavement of our African foreparents, the genocide of our indigenous people, as we build the most modern post-colonial society. We reflect on our past and our challenges and the struggle of our peoples. We must never forget the sacrifices they made, and we must never forget those who profited from their sacrifice. That is why our call for reparatory justice remains even relevant today. Currently, our government is embarking on a project by 4 local historians to document our real story, the history of our country, and the struggle of our peoples. Our story must be told, and must be told by us. It is my hope we can see the introduction of the Garifuna language in our schools. And I'm hoping we can begin work on this initiative in the not too distant future. And I agree with our good friend, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, call to erect a monument in honor of our first national hero, His Excellency Paramount Chief Joseph Chatouille. We have to lift our consciousness as a people. We have to work with our communities to build that level of consciousness. The sound of the drums here today echoes powerfully the pain, the struggle, the resilience of our people. But it also tells the story of our hope for a better tomorrow for the future generation of Vincentians. Long live the people's struggle for self-determination, social justice, reparations, and the quest for a better St. Vincent and the Grenadines, together and united. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Carlos James. Long live the quest for better St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Thank you so much for reminding us who we are, resilient. And this is the legacy of the Right Honorable Joseph Chatelier and so many of our ancestors. We now have greetings from Dr. the Honorable Lauren Friday, Leader of the Opposition. Let's welcome him, please.
Your Excellency, Her Excellency Dawn Smith, the Governor General's Deputy, Dr. the Honorable Ralphie Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Carlos James, Minister of Tourism, Civil Aviation, Sustainable Development and Culture, and other members of Cabinet, other members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Sir Frankie Joseph, and members of the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, uniformed organization and cultural organizations, the media, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Vincentians, good morning to you, wherever you are. I trust you are well. By the grace of God, those of you who are here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and those who are overseas in our diaspora, we are sharing equally the joy of belonging to this beautiful nation, Eurome, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We are also sharing in the hope of better things to come. How beautiful it was this morning to hear our national anthem sung in our first national language. And I too make the call to have this taught in our schools and become part of our heritage, but also of our day-to-day culture. This year, we celebrate under the theme Appreciating Our Identity, Preserving Our Heritage with Pride. As we all know, in the founding of any nation, there are those who make their mark and then become part of our history. They are the freedom fighters. They are builders of businesses and other institutions. The community-spirited men and women who seize every opportunity to serve their neighbors and friends simply to make life better for them. Leaders in other walks of life who forge a path forward for all of us. We stand on their shoulders today, even as we too know that we must play our part. As a nation, we have decided to honor as national heroes those who make the greatest contribution to our development. Paramount Chief Joseph Chatelier is of course the first and thus far the only one so honored. No one else could have been first, as there is no better example of courage and sacrifice than his. notwithstanding that we are a small nation, our history is rich and complex. It contains many acts of courage and sacrifice and hold our foundation together and inspire us to continue to build upon it. Among the many identities of our people are those who have made their indelible mark in the soil and on the soul of our people, on the character of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Though we stand today as a proud and independent nation, we know all too well from our history and indeed from current international events that national sovereignty is not guaranteed. It is a fragile ideal that is mostly won through struggle and must be defended at every turn. Chateaubriand taught us that. In his time, the early struggles and wars fought for freedom were defined by alliances of like-minded people who knew the value of freedom and cherished it above everything else. People who would never surrender or diminish for expedience or short-term gain a nation's right to self-determination. As we celebrate National Heroes Day today and look toward the future, it is fitting to remember our history and to invoke the indomitable spirit of Chateaubriand. For as the philosopher Santayana said, and cautioned so many years ago, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Chateaubriand himself called upon us to unite as citizens and as brothers and sisters to build up and protect this land. Today, as we continue the never-ending task of nation building, we must invoke that same spirit. In short, we must work together to build a country, our country, and to do so in the words and example of Chateaubriand as a united people. Today we express this, of course, in the common phrase, one people, one nation, one Vincent. There is perhaps no better time than Heroes Day to call upon our better angels and together pledge to lift our game for the common good, to transcend mediocrity and limited thinking and aim higher, to consider how we are now and might become heroes in our own right. Every day offers us opportunity. It is for us to recognize them, to embrace them, and to make them count, to make the most of them. I believe in the virtue of work and the power of the opportunity and strength and noble character of our people. But we must all be passionate about fulfilling our potential and working for a better future, one in which we are safe, prosperous, and free. We work together so that everyone can succeed, no matter his or her background, or beliefs, and where we never surrender our patrimony or birthright. For to surrender it would mean that Chateaubriand struggled and died in vain. And we know that is not so. That is why we are here today, commemorating his life and sacrifice and honoring him as our national hero. Chateaubriand's proclamation was a call to arms in a time of war. The sovereignty of the Garifuna people was threatened. It rejected colonialism and its merciless march of conquest and subjugation of free, resilient people. His struggle has continued in different ways by our forebears over the centuries since, through the attainment of our independence in 1979 and in the years that followed. It was a struggle we know for freedom and sovereignty, a yearning of people from time immemorial all over the world. And so, the lessons from Chateaubriand's time are crucially important today. Our world is challenged once again with large-scale conflict, this time in Ukraine. The aggression and expansionism this time is coming from Russia. The conflict is an invasion of a sovereign nation by a powerful aggressor, the largest war in Europe since World War II. The tragedy unfolds daily, inexorably. Many young soldiers on both sides are killed, and innocent civilians, women, children, the elderly, the infirm, die in bombed out Ukrainian cities or while trying to flee. Military installations, but not only those, hospitals, schools, residences have been shelled and bombed. Every day the emerging video images show massive devastation, and we are told that the worst is yet to come. Because we are more interconnected now than ever before in human history. The tremors of that war are already being felt here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Our nationals serve in the armed forces of NATO countries, the USA and the UK, and will no doubt be called up and positioned in Europe to reassure NATO allies who fear is spreading conflict. The economic fallout also affects us. With higher oil and other commodity prices, we must prepare for it to help cushion the effects on our people who have already been through, as we have heard from previous speakers, so much hardship over the past year. Dear people, a war of aggression is a grotesque absurdity, especially in this modern era. With every moral fiber in our body, both individual and collective, we must denounce it and oppose it. In doing so, we will be upholding our proud legacy and the values we have defended throughout our own history. We will, with freedom-loving people the world over, proclaim and defend the inalienable rights of men and women to be free wherever they are. Let us pray for peace in Ukraine and in every part of this world where there is conflict. As I noted, we have been confronted by many challenges over the past year. We have continued to endure the devastation and the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. 106 persons have died here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and other nationals have died abroad in the USA, in Canada, and the UK. I believe all of us know someone who has died of COVID-19. My sympathy goes out to the families of those who have died. From the outset, I urge that this scourge, unprecedented in our lifetime, will require us to work together as a united front against it if we are to limit the damage and recover as quickly as possible. That remains the approach we must pursue, all of us. And we can here commit ourselves to do so in the spirit of Chatouillet. For we are not out of it yet. So we must continue to protect ourselves and others around us. We cannot let it divide us and cause more pain for some who are made to carry a heavier burden than the rest of us. I also cannot stress enough that vaccines are the most powerful tool still in our fight against the virus. They have saved Vincentian lives. But following our brotherhood of free nations and our values, we believe that that is an individual choice. As we learn to live with COVID, we must recover from its other devastating impact, the costly loss of livelihoods across our land. We must rebuild the pillars of our economy by supporting our tourism sector to recover and by backing our fisherfolk and our farmers, among others. As we move towards economic recovery, we must begin to invest in infrastructure that will support growth long into the future. And we must attract sustainable investments that are aligned with our goals of creating jobs and growing our economy, of bringing prosperity to our people. How we recover will determine our trajectory for years to come. It will determine the job opportunities for our nation, especially for our young people, who we cannot afford to lose to other countries with greener pastures. Our brighter future here depends on keeping them here, contributing to development, giving them real opportunities to be heroes in their own way. We are also recovering, as we have heard, from the eruption of La Soufrière. When the volcano erupted last April, overnight, our lives were turned upside down, particularly those in the communities up north, where the traditional communities of the Garifuna people are. Thousands fled their homes, seeking refuge in safer zones. As a people, we showed our true, kind spirit and provided shelter, food, and comfort to those who were severely affected. Our brothers and sisters in the region and in our diaspora, especially in the USA, Canada, and the UK, also gave generously. They supported and helped our people to cope with the physical and economic disruption caused in their lives. But the trial is not yet over. The rebuilding of lives, economy, and communities will continue for a long time to come. But rebuild we must. And with a bigger vision to making those communities more resilient and strong, and giving them the pride of place in our present day as they have been in our history. And the pace of rebuilding must accelerate so that the life for those persons who were directly affected or most affected can return to normal as soon as possible. That is a commitment we must give to the people of Sandy Bay, Oya, of Chateau, Fitzhughes, and all other communities that were directly affected. The purpose of designating national heroes is not only to recognize the outstanding contribution of individuals who are so named. It is also done, I believe, so that we can hold those persons up as outstanding examples for others to follow. They must serve as inspiration for our citizens. As we were tested by the two disasters recounted earlier, the COVID-19 pandemic and the volcanic eruption, many people performed heroically. Throughout the pandemic, teachers, nurses, police officers, private sector workers continued to provide service and to do so safely and effectively. They deserve praise and our gratitude. The need for their quiet heroism continues, and we expect them to deliver as they have done. The same goes for those who were called upon to respond and did respond in a mighty way when the volcano erupted. They too are in our debt. But not everyone who has made their mark on this nation gained due recognition for their efforts. I want to celebrate them here today as well. There are also many everyday heroes, persons who perform random acts of kindness, expecting nothing in return. Those who reject cynicism and see value in community service and volunteerism. How much poorer our lives would be without them. So we must encourage them, and even if only on this day, say thanks and urge them on. For those who value public service and give their lives to it, whatever the cost, they who do so because they know it is noble to serve their people and that service is its own reward. In that spirit, I must recall the service and the passing of our great nation builder, Sir James F. Mitchell, who died during the year past. He always believed that as a nation, we could do great things, that we can punch, so to speak, above our weight, that we had untapped potential. He devoted his life to seeing that realized. May his example of service inspire us to give of our best during our time. These are all people who are helping to forge our nation in the true Vinci spirit. Today I salute you all. We must recall, however, that in our pursuits and as we push forward as a nation, we must never give up the invaluable birthright that God has given to us. Decisions on development should always balance benefits with costs to our community and must always involve the people in a meaningful way in that undertaking. We are a small nation, unlike vast nations like the United States and Canada. Every bit of our land is precious, and Chateaubriand taught us that too. Every bit of our land, as precious as it is, that must not just support us or our children, but our children's children and generations well into our future. We must guard against so-called development or developers and others who would sell out the future generations of our country by digging up our birthright and shipping it overseas for pennies. In that spirit, we must always guard our patrimony and ensure that it is never squandered for short-term gain. In this too, our nation requires us to use our voice, our actions, to seek answers where they are needed, and to be steadfast in doing so. That is our duty as heirs of Chateaubriand. In conclusion, we must put in place our plans to recover from the twin disasters and sow the seeds of a better tomorrow. If we neglect the field today, we will fail to reap the harvest, as will our young people and generations to come. It is simply not good enough to sit by and hope that things will improve. We must be the agents of that recovery. And only through leadership that is truly focused on the development of our people will we see that plan executed and our potential realized. I know that we are capable of great things. We have seen the promise of this over the past year in how our people responded to disaster. So let us celebrate National Heroes Day and think about how we can make those great things of which we are capable come true. Don't leave it up to anyone else to do. And don't measure what you will do by watching what little others do. Instead, as the slogan goes, you just do it and give it your all. May God bless us all. May He grant us peace. Have a great and productive National Heroes Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Friday. We have been reminded of our current challenges and the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 when it unfolded right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And the last eruptions have proven to be challenges that our Vincentian populace, our Vincentian citizens have proven to be resilient. I want us to remember too, in Dr. Friday's presentation, Chateaubriand's timeless call that we must unite to build and protect our yeomen, our St. Vincent and the Grenadines. At this time, we would have a special presentation by Machina Collins and the Avenue Dancers. We know history is recorded through writings, history is recorded in speeches and presentations, but also history is importantly captured through the arts. So let's welcome Machina Collins and the Avenue Dancers at this time.
Good morning to everyone. Come guide me. Come guide me.
are blooming, I come to you to receive the teachings life will bring. Many an obstacle, that's why I sing. 'Cause that's my vehicle to triumph over whatever may be, to conquer the air, to conquer the sea. I am the youth, I am the future. So please hold my hand, help me to go through. Yes, I totally depend on you. I am the youth, I am the future. If I stumble and fall, pick me up from the ground. Answer me when I call. Help me to wear my crown. Oh, come guide me. Through this pain and frustration, come guide me. I am the future of the nation. Come guide me. Through this pain and frustration, come guide me. I am the future of this nation. Come guide me. Come guide me. Come guide me. Come guide me. Yes, I am the next generation, rough or calm. I made that decision to sail on in life's muddy waters, face the dawn. For our sons and daughters, love and guidance is all that we need. Without this, how will we ever succeed? Please do it now, it's better than later. Empower us to make a change. What more can we ask? Please don't keep us caged. 'Cause when you're gone, we won't take over. You've been here once before. You know the roots, you know the score. When I knock on your door, don't turn me back, no, no. Come guide me. Uplift this new generation. Come guide me. I am the future of this nation. Come guide me. Through this pain and frustration, come guide me. Share with me your great education. Come guide me. Come guide me. Come guide me. Come guide me. Thank you. I think we recognize that presentation was very powerful indeed. Let's give them another round of applause. I particularly like the line that said, "Pick me up if I fall," and that's what we need to do for our brothers and sisters, even as we approach or we endure challenging times. Let's give them a round of applause. We will now welcome to do the featured address at today's ceremony the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. the Honorable Ralph E. Gonsalves. Let's welcome our Prime Minister.
Madam Chairperson, Your Excellency, the Governor General's Deputy, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Cabinet, colleagues, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of the Constabulary, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, and members of the clergy and other organizations represented here, including those who have performed on drums and dance, all citizens and visitors present here, and those who are listening to us on this or viewing us on this or that media platform. Today is the day that the Lord has made. Let us be thankful and let us rejoice in it. We are at Dorsetshire Hill, and where we stand is hallowed ground. But we look around, our hills are joyful together. Our seascape is beautiful. Our people reaffirm daily their belief in the supremacy of God and the freedom and dignity of man and woman. And every day too, we make certain that we look after our families and we work together for our nation and to preserve our unity and our instruments and symbols of nationhood, including our sacred citizenship and our passports, which are an outward sign of the inward grace of citizenship. "20 years ago, at Victoria Park, just past midnight, on March the 14th, 2002, Paramount Chief Joseph Chatillon entered as our first national hero into the pantheon of national heroes as the Right Excellent Joseph Chatillon, National Hero of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It is high time, 20 years later, to place into that pantheon others whom we consider have achieved that particular status. We have had a lot of discussions. We have had a lot of debates. I remind us about the criteria for someone to have confirmed upon him or her the Order of National Hero. They are set out in Section 10 of the Order of National Heroes Act, which came into operation on the 26th of February 2002. And the provisions of Section 10 I shall read, so that the discussions can be sharpened yet again for us to come to some finality about other persons upon whom the honor of national hero ought to be conferred. The criteria are as follows. a person who was born in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, or who was at the time of his death a citizen of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, or entitled to be a citizen of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and who satisfies the criteria set out in the law may be qualified for the conferment of the honor of national hero. And in determining the qualification of a person, the advisory committee on national heroes shall have regard to whether that person A has given outstanding service to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and his or her contribution has altered positively the course of the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Or that person has given service to St. Vincent and the Grenadines which has been exemplified by visionary and pioneering leadership, extraordinary achievement, and the attainment of the highest excellence, which has redounded to the honor of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Or that person has, through his or her heroic exploits and sacrifice, contributed to the improvement of the economic, social, or political condition of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Vincentians generally. So there are three bundles of alternative criteria. And the Act, the law goes on to say, the order of national hero shall only be conferred upon a person who is dead. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we do not confer the order of national heroes on those who are alive. You may be a living legend, but you can't be a living national hero. There may well be the necessity and desirability for another category called legends. But national heroes, that office is preserved for those who are dead. That is the wisdom of Parliament. And the way the appointments take place, this National Advisory Committee, which consists of 9 members, is broad-based. They're all appointed by the Governor General, who is the Chancellor of the Order of National Heroes and is responsible for the administration of the order. 3 of the members are appointed by the Governor General in her own deliberate judgment. 2 are appointed upon the advice of the Prime Minister. 1 is appointed on the advice of the Leader of the Opposition. And 3 are appointed from a list of names submitted by the local non-governmental organizations. And such appointments are made after consultation with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. On each of the 2 occasions when the Advisory Committee was appointed, as Prime Minister, I accepted without demur the persons whom the Governor General chose to appoint from the list submitted by the non-governmental organizations. So in a nutshell, the Advisory Committee makes the findings and the recommendations. The Cabinet considers, the Prime Minister advises the Governor General, and the Governor General appoints. That is the process, and those are the criteria. Now, I had many years ago delivered a speech at the Open Campus back in April 2013, entitled "The Making of a National Hero, the Law and Practice in St. Vincent and the Grenadines." And in order to have a permanent record of it many years, a few years later I had it published, or caused to be published, in a monograph, including an analysis too of the trial of George McIntosh and the 1935 uprising. We gather today with two important considerations: solidarity and memory. The Garifuna Heritage Foundation emphasized a gathering, a coming together. And I take that to mean a coming together for a specific purpose, which means there has to be solidarity. It means that individuals must gather together and that those individuals must not be atomized, because if they are atomized, they don't want to come together. They're social individuals, because history has taught us that it is only through social solidarity that we have achievement. You have a lot of individuals who tell you, I don't want to have anything to do anybody else. What I do is my choice and my choice only. Well, there are some people who think they're so bright that they can do anything by themselves. But you know, brightness is an interesting condition. There is brightness which blinds and brightness which illuminates. If you are driving your SUV on your high beam and you're coming opposite me in the road and I have on my high beam to drive in my SUV, each of us so bright that we're blinding one another, we can't see. Brightness of the individual is that which illuminates, clears the pathway, and the pathway can only be cleared with people acting in communion with one another. To be sure, you're an individual, but individual as individual, you do not achieve for yourself and for your society what ought to be achieved. Individual as individual degenerates into selfishness. You can have the full expression of your individualism, but that full expression is best manifested when you work in solidarity with one another. The police officers know that, and my life experiences have taught me that. And therefore, on National Heroes Day, we must always be mindful of those who speak unity, but who philosophically and in practice sow disunity and discord. and that those who preach peace and simultaneously wage war are hypocrites. You cannot preach peace and wage war. Now, where we are today, in 2022, we have had experiences historically, and we must have the memory and to see how those experiences were dealt with to assist us in the current period as we go forward. I have reflected very much on our history. I read everything I can put my hands on about our history, and I seek to research original material also. And many times I've come here at National Heroes Day, and I have spoken extensively about the situation between 1763 and 1800, and particularly between 1763 and 1797, when, after the commission of extensive genocide against the indigenous people, the Kalinago and the Garifuna, and the forced deportation of large numbers who had survived the isolation in Balisu, and they had been taken to Rotten Island. And for that native genocide, and for the subsequent enslavement of Africans, this government has been in the forefront of demanding reparations from the colonial powers, and I reiterate today that demand for reparations. And when we began that call, there are some others who say, well, you're wasting your time. Well, I lived to see in a short period of time how the matter has galvanized. And I may not see its full achievement, because like all flesh, I will go to the great beyond. But I know with absolute certainty, as I stand today, whether it happens before I go to the great beyond or when I'm there, I know that there will be a formal program of reparations. This is a great cause, and great causes have never been won by doubtful men and women. Never. Today I am not going to speak historically about between 1763 and 1800 about slavery and emancipation. I want to talk today on National Heroes Day about a comparable period in our history with the kinds of challenges which we are facing, and to see in that particular period how matters were dealt with, and to see if we can learn any lessons. The period I'm talking about is a 50-year period from 1881 to 1931. You may say, Ralph, what is that period? Why are you going there? Well, I will tell you some of the things between 1881 and 1931, and see if you don't see certain structural conditions and events which occurred in that period, which are reminiscent of a period in which we have been going through, particularly with the pandemic, the volcanic eruptions, hurricanes and storms, and political conflict overseas and their impact upon us. And as the backdrop, the way in which our principal agricultural crop, bananas, had been affected by the collapse of the preferential market regime in Britain. So I begin in 1881, when the collapse of the sugar industry, which had been the mainstay of the economy during the period from the late 18th century up to that point. So we had the beginnings of the demise, the rapid demise of sugar. 1881. You can read bananas. Then in 1898, you had the worst hurricane that this country in recorded history has experienced. If you talk to your grandmother who had spoken to her grandmother or mother, they will tell you about 1898. And then in 1902, the eruption of La Soufrière. Then in 1914 to 1918, the First World War, and nearly 400 Vincentians were recruited for the First World War. By the way, when they came back, there was a brass band welcoming them, you know. But that is all. They didn't get a brass farthing. They had to fight. In fact, the colonial government urged many of them to migrate to Cuba and helped to organize for many of them to go to Cuba. In 1918, there was a world pandemic, the Spanish flu. It impacted us, but not quite the way in which COVID has impacted us, because it didn't have the extent of the transportation and communication as we have now. Then in 1926, another hurricane. And 1929 to 1931, the global economic depression. We have had all those things in the last 20 years, you know. And today, the question though, what was different? The first thing which is different is that in those days, you had 100 estates controlling the bulk of the land. To be sure, person squatted on Crown lands or got some lease. And after 1897, after the Royal Commission of 1897, there was some land distribution down Leeward, on the windward side too, right up into Park Hill and South Rivers. So, but today, we have a large peasantry, a large group of small farmers. The estates have been essentially subdivided. Government took over, different governments divide them up, and some of them were so too expensive for the planters to run in the old way, so they had to sell them out. So that's one important difference. A second important difference, in that period, you had pure colony government. Now we have an independent country with an independent parliament, representatives of the people. Thirdly, something we have now and we have to make use of, there's a greater sense of oneness today than there was. I'll tell you why. Because in that period, there was naked racism. In fact, so much so, when in 1919, a fellow RMC Jack founded a branch of the Universal Negro Improvement Association of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. The colonial authorities harassed him. Eventually he had to go to America. They banned the Negro World, which was Garvey's newspaper. It couldn't come in. The people who ran the country were the colonial authorities then and the planter merchant elite. Different situation today. And the divisiveness which you had based on race and ethnicity doesn't exist today, as you had in that particular period. Science and technology today are more advanced than in that period. These are significant differences, and these are real possibilities. And we use our instruments of sovereignty and independence to build fraternal relations with different countries and institutions to assist us in the development of our country today. But what happened in that period among people? There are some things which they did which we have to emulate. Those who had small farms, they worked more cooperatively with one another. Cooperatives were formed all over the country because people realized they couldn't survive by themselves. And of course, because life was nasty, brutish, and short, a lot of people had to run away and go overseas. You know, the population, the numbers of persons who migrated were in excess of the natural increase in the population. You want to know where the people went? Guyana, Trinidad. Some went to Barbados. Santo Domingo, Cuba. Costa Rica, Panama, to help with the building of the canal. You have to research properly to see the Vincentians who went to Panama, because the recruiting agent was in Barbados, and they left here and went to Barbados, and people thought that they were all Barbadians leaving. Of course, a lot of Barbadians went. This might surprise you, that people went to Brazil. You know, there was a young man, a 21-year-old young man, was born in 1884. He went to Brazil in that period. Fellow of East Indian descent. One of his parents had come as indentured laborers. Fellow named Henry Crichton got malaria and he came back home. And he established, with the money he made, he established a trucking company. He died in the 1950s, Henry Crichton. All part of our history as to how people dealt with it in that period. We now have a society, through the fever of history, we have evolved. Our society has evolved, metaphorically as a symphony. We have become creolized. We are the songs of the indigenous people, the Kalinago and the Garifuna. We are the rhythm of Africa, we are the melody of Europe, we are the chords of Asia, and we are the homegrown lyrics of the Caribbean. And we have in our nation, I repeat, the instruments of sovereignty and independence, and the symbols of citizenship, well, the essence of citizenship and the symbol of citizenship, that is the passport. Not to be abused, not to be misused, not to be sold. And then, in 1902, nearly 2,000 persons died in the La Soufrière eruption. This time, not one soul died. That is something today we must celebrate. You know, Carlos James has given has given a report, and I don't need to do it here, about the millions which have been spent from COVID through to the La Soufrière eruption, and the millions which are continuing to be spent on keeping lives and livelihoods together. Production supports, and also the housing program. The resources required are phenomenal. It has not been easy. And on this occasion here, we have to reiterate that we have to build back better and stronger. And I'm hopeful that those who are interested only in politics must not seek on grounds of political opportunism to block the progress of people and the unity of the people. It's important. be serious about this. But I want to go beyond the issue of building back stronger and better. Vital as that is, central as that is. As the cabinet knows, and people have heard me talk about it, we have to shape it not only in building back better and stronger, but we have to shape it within an existential frame of resparing. To respair. This is a time of respair. R-E-S-P-A-I-R. If you look it up, when you're going home, Google it on your cell phone. R-E-S-P-A-I-R. It's a word which has been in disuse since the 16th century. It hasn't been very much used. But when you're facing challenges like we have, you have to find language to represent what we have to do. Respair means fresh hope. And once you say hope, you say faith, and you say love. And you have to embrace this fresh hope. You have to be engaged in repairing. And this includes building back better and stronger in respect of the infrastructure, the houses, lives and livelihoods, all of that. It includes those things, but it includes something additional. Something which goes to our essence. And that is why I am so happy to see the young people dancing and involved in drumming. And that is why I want to see more sports. Things which have to help to lift the spirit. That's why when 1 week before the ladies went away to Dominica, they came to me and asked if the government could provide $65,000 for them to go to Dominica for the OECS championship. They brought 3 things. That one for just over $100,000 to go to another Caribbean championship, and one for over $150,000 to go to a wider championship. So I told them I will support them one at a time. As if you go Dominica and you come last, I can't send you to the other one which is bigger. They come first. They have to practice. And in that practice, in these difficult times, they're embracing hope and they're repairing. And I'll get the money for them to go to the next one. Whether they go to the third one depends on how they do the second. Because we have to make sure that they're always targets. And that is why I want to see Carnival. People want to repair, and they want part of it, they want a release. You notice how everything is tied together? I don't talk these things just in a vacuum, you know. And I'm making them understandable and intelligible. I want to hear the police steel band. I want to hear the policeman them on the saxophone. I want to hear them blowing. I want to hear the blasting. And I want to hear Skinny and Fireman and all the others and the Calypsonians. There are some people who talk about a slim down carnival. Well, I don't know how you could have a slim down carnival. If it's slim down, it ain't a carnival, it's something else, it's an event. It's not carnival. But in order to have the full-fledged carnival, we need to have the COVID very much under control. And the best way to do that is for more people to take the vaccine. So James Mitchell was quite correct about that. And I remember him very much for that and other things. At the moment, I believe there's either 1 or 2 active cases in the country, yesterday's numbers. There are no hospitalizations. But we're not out of the woods yet. We see the increase in China. Another wave can come and hit us, you know. We see in some parts of the United States an increase. We see some jump in Britain, in some areas. So we have to be careful. We have to follow all the protocols. And I'm advising you to take the vaccine. It is still the best bulwark that we have against the COVID virus, taking the vaccine. And as I've told everybody, I have taken 2 Sputniks. I've taken 2 Pfizer. The last time I took a Pfizer was on the 19th of October. 5 months after would be the 19th of March, and I'm ready for my booster on the 19th of March. Science has helped us. It would have been very good if the science could help us that the vaccine could have lasted longer. But it is what it is. And we make use of what we have. We must respect. The memory involves looking at where we have come from. But where we are coming from, we mustn't live there. You can't live in the past. If you live in the past, you'll be miserable in the present. What we have to do is to utilize the past. Embrace that memory and let that memory have a function as to how we must live today and for the future. So I don't want us to romanticize anything from the past. Look at it through the prism of our own eyes and take what we can from it, which is of great value to us. Resilience, commitment, fortitude, calmness, a sense of commitment to our nation, social solidarity, love and caring, and faith. There's a poet from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, now dead, named Daniel Williams. Danny Williams was a lawyer, he was also a poet. He has a poem called We Are the Cenotaphs. He says, he begins the poem with a sentence. States very simply, we are all time. All of us. We are all the time. His second sentence there, only the future is ours to desecrate. So even though we are all time, past, present and future, only the future is ours to desecrate. And he goes on to say, the present is the past, and the past our father's mischiefs. Well, he took some poetic liberty with that part about our father's mischiefs. Now, when we are addressing time, and we must not desecrate the future, means we have to work together, improve yourself, your family, your community, your nation. That we don't desecrate it. In order to do that, you have to take advantage of the opportunities to educate yourself, develop more skills, all the time, and read and study. Education don't go to waste, you know. And we mustn't be afraid of education. We must be afraid of ignorance. You hear me? Don't be afraid of training. And it always helps in your life and living and your production. But you also, when you're understanding time, don't think for one moment that time is minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, or years. That's not time. That is the measurement of time. Time is something else. Our relationship with one another. That's how. It is something which you can't put your hand on, or you can't see with your eye like space, geographic space. Just like how space is a relationship, distance is a relationship between 2 points, measured in feet and yards. So time is a relationship. And therefore, on some matters, you will want things to be done urgently, and other times, we have to work it out to get to it. I know modern man and woman so accustomed to instant coffee, instant cocoa, KFC and pizza, that is instant. As you know, some things you have to prepare the way to get it. We couldn't get the investment down at Buckerment with sandals unless we build the airport. You over us? We couldn't build the quality houses north of the Dry River unless we did build the Rabuka Bridge. Huh? You wouldn't be where you are unless you spent 7 years in primary school and 5 years in secondary school, and some of you 2 additional years at community college. And you ain't finished yet, because you gotta go university. Huh? Some things you want immediately, but you mustn't be so preoccupied with immediacy that you don't put things together for yourself sustainably. You understand why I could never sell passport and never sell citizenship? I'm not talking politics, I'm talking policy.
Again.
It's not sustainable, and it depends on what other people do. As I speak, there's a bill going through the House in the United States. A congressman from Utah and a congressman from Tennessee, one Republican, one Democrat. in the light of what is happening in Ukraine, they're seeking to curb what they call citizenship by investment, the golden passports. And last week, Wednesday, don't know if you see it yet, look it up. At the European Parliament, all the countries with selling passports, and they list them. They give them until 2025 to make up their mind. If you want to maintain your Schengen visa waiver, you have to drop citizenship by investment. Otherwise, they're taking away the visa waiver. And Britain is also, though Britain is not in the European Union, the European Parliament anymore, thinking the same thing. Remember I warned you about that? I saw around the corner and tell you that that is not sustainable. And what are the implications for you? And today, at National Heroes Day, we must reaffirm our commitment to our citizenship and to our passport. That is what Joseph Chatoya would have wanted us to do. So, as I leave you at this time of fresh hope, we must respect. Each of us must commit ourselves. We're better than today than we did yesterday. Ourselves, families, these are one. Now we must get married. Get married. Leadership which is visionary. Is the answer. Short doggy. Only to fall flat on your face. And to defend patrimony. We are at a time when what is happening across the world, and particularly now, getting worse with military aggression against Ukraine. That we're going to see increasing prices of many commodities, including oil, food products. And it will get worse before it gets better. But we in our Caribbean have to continue to call for cessation of hostilities, for peace, for security and prosperity for all, not only for some. And while Ukraine is on the TV, don't forget Haiti. While Ukraine on the TV, don't forget Syria. Don't forget Afghanistan. Don't forget Yemen. Don't forget the Central African Republic. Don't forget Ethiopia. Remember, bad as it is, as we are seeing it in Ukraine, there are other parts of the world which we have had similar or even worse kinds of bombardment. I end as I began. Today is the day. Let us be thankful. Let us rejoice. Happy National Heroes Day. Thank you very much.
At this time, I will challenge our Prime Minister and the Honorable Minister for Tourism, Culture, Sustainable Development, and Civil Aviation for documentaries to have our history for posterity purposes. Thank you so much, Prime Minister. We will move swiftly along in light of the weather to the recreating aspect of this morning and have the commencement of that ceremony, but first being made laid by the Governor General's Deputy, Her Excellency Dawn Smith. Ventura. Ambassador of the Republic of Venezuela, Mr. Francisco Manuel Perez Santana. Boy Scout Association of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We will have the Garifuna Heritage Foundation.
general observance, we will have the citation for the Right Honorable Joseph Shattuck. It will be done by Shiloh Sutherland from the Girl Guides Association of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Her Excellency Dawn Smith, the Governor General's Deputy, Dr. the Honorable Ralph E. Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. the Honorable Lorraine Friday, Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Carlos James, Minister of Tourism, Civil Aviation, Sustainable Development and Culture, Members of Cabinet, Members of Parliament, Members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Frankie Joseph, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, uniformed organizations and cultural organizations, the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today, we gather to honor the Right Excellent Paramount Chief Joseph Shattuck. He died in this area, a fighter for self-determination and independence. This defender of Haruna was ambushed and killed on March 14, 1795. Shattuck led the Garifuna people in guerrilla campaigns against the invading French and British for several years in the latter part of the 1700s. He won most of his battles as he was a brilliant military strategist. He was a world-class diplomat, and most importantly, he was and still is today loved and respected by his people. In commemoration of the life and struggles of this, the greatest son of our Vincentian soil, March 14th is celebrated as National Heroes Day. In 2001, this day was declared by proclamation. An Act of Parliament followed. Acting on the advice of the Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Ralph E. Gonsalves, and in accordance with Sections 11 and 12 of the Order of National Heroes Act, Number 7 of 2002, His Excellency the Governor General, at the time, Sir Charles Antrobus, conferred the Order of National Hero upon the Right Excellent Paramount Chief Joseph Shattuck. So it was formalized from 14th March 2002 that he is our nation's first national hero.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sutherland. And we have officially come to the end of this morning's ceremony. We have officially come to the end of this morning's ceremony. I want to thank everyone for taking time to be here to honor and to pay homage to our national hero. When we started this morning, we could have allowed the dark clouds to deter us, but the dark clouds are now behind us, and in front of us is bright and clear as we press onwards. As the Prime Minister said in his address, and it is most fitting now, respire. Let us continue to respire as Vincentian people as we continue to work to build our St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We would have the formal departure of the Governor General's Deputy, followed by the Honorable